Welcome to the Delaware Content Standards Gradeband Extensions, a closer look, presented by the Access Project at the Center for Disability Studies at the University of Delaware. Today we are going to look at the Delaware Content Standards Gradeband Extensions. Gradeband extensions, also known as GBEs, are entry points to the Delaware Content Standards. The extensions were designed to assist teachers in providing access to the general education curriculum for students with significant intellectual disabilities. But what does that mean? Let's take a closer look at the extensions and how teachers can use them in planning academic activities. This is an English language arts standard from the Delaware Content Standards, Reading for Literature, grade band 6 to 8. 8.2. Determine the theme or central idea of a text and analyze its development over the course of the text, including its relationship to the characters, setting, and plot. Provide an objective summary of the text. The standard shown here is in its original form and is not accessible for all students. How can we make it accessible? How can we meet the needs of all students? The first step is to identify the main idea or essence of the standard. We need to break down the standard to its basic meaning. So, let's look at Standard 8.2. The essence for this standard was identified as determine the theme and summarize text. You can see that determine the theme and summarize text captures the basic meaning of the standard. The essence is key to ensuring that the extensions stay true to the standard and do not drift too far from the original intent. Now let's look at the extensions. The extensions break apart the standard to create entry points for students with a wide range of abilities. The extensions are a continuum and students should not be categorized to any one particular extension. The extensions range in complexity from most complex, E1, to least complex, E3. So, let's look at each extension for Standard 8.2 to see how students will access the standard. But before we talk about the specific extensions, it is important to point out a few things. Number one, the extensions do not specify individual accommodations or supports that may be necessary for a student, such as picture symbols, communication system, objects, tactile representation, or computer software. The reason for this is that teachers will consider these individual supports when planning academic activities based on individual student need. Number two, the materials and text must be grade appropriate. This means that it should be the same text used by all students in his or her grade. For example, if students in the 8th grade are reading the book Seed Folks, it is expected that students using the extensions will use that same text. Text may be adapted. Adaptations can include making the book easier to use physically by providing page turners or tactile enhancements. Another way to do this is to make the content easier to read by simplifying or changing the text or including picture symbols. This is a sample of what an adapted text would look like. With this in mind, let's move on to the extensions. Extension 1, also known as E1, is the most complex and is closest to the original standard. This extension is describe the theme of a text and retell its main events. A student requiring this extension may be reading a text on his or her own, which can be adapted, using text-to-speech software, listening to a book on tape, or listening to someone read the text aloud. How the student describes the theme of the text and retells main events will depend on his or her method of communication and necessary supports. Some methods for response may be a voice output device, picture symbols, speaking, or writing. Now let's look at the next extension. E2 is less complex than E1. Identify the theme of a text and sequence its main events. Differences between E1 and E2 are that we move from describe and retell to identify and sequence. Identifying the theme may be from an array of answers using picture symbols, photographs, or verbally. Sequencing can be done much the same way, with picture symbols, words or phrases, or photos. Students may answer questions such as what happened first, next, last, etc. Now let's look at E3. E3 is the least complex of the extensions. Students using E3 as an entry point will be sequencing main events. Teachers will determine the number of events based on the individual student. A student may be working on first and last or beginning, middle, and end. Students using a switch may be presented with choices to select an answer. As with all the extensions, accommodations and supports are based on individual need. Let's review what we've discussed. We started with the original standard 8.2, the standard used by all students. The essence captures the main idea from the standard. The extensions are entry points to the standard. Students should be instructed using the extension that is appropriate to their individual strengths. This may vary from standard to standard. We hope we have answered your questions about grade band extensions. If you would like more information about grade band extensions, contact the Access Project at 302-831-1052 or email us at deaccessproject@udel.edu. Visit us on the web at www.deaccessproject.org. Thank you.